Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We have a great guest today on a very interesting topic. We have Timo Riska, who's head of R&D at PFF, and he's got something that PFF has not delved into previously that I'm aware of, which is the quality of opponent for offensive linemen in terms of their grades. So, Timo, first of all, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, well, really appreciate you taking the time here. Your charts always catch my eye, but in this case, this was a really interesting one, and you have all of the offensive line groups, centers, guards, and tackles done. We'll talk about center first because Tyler Linderbaum having a great pass blocking year, and your chart kind of shows that in terms of his results relative to expectation. But I want you to talk through your methodology.
Yeah, so let's, we need a little bit background here, I think. So basically what PFF has done forever is we are giving a grade to each player on every snap. And it's basically like the walk rate is basically on a -2 to +2 scale in 0.5 increments, with +2 obviously being the best, -2 being the worst, and 0 kind of being the expected thing. And the new thing we do for offensive line and a defensive line since 2000, can't really tell right now, but like 5 or 6 years of data, I think we do have right now, is we actually charting blocking, pass blocking, and run blocking in more detail. So when I look at our data 10 years ago, I can say, okay, here's a right tackle. This guy lined up at right tackle, and then I can basically say, okay, this guy lined up at left defensive end. So I can kind of assume that they went against each other. But what I can't, obviously there are stunts, there are blitzes, and the tight ends might help. But this kind of information was not really in our data like 10 years ago. But since 2018 to 2019, I think we actually chart all of this. So we chart exactly who is blocking whom. So what we know is, okay, this player is supposed to block this player. He gets help from this tight end, or this pass rusher, has a double team, has to rush against those two blockers, and so on. So we actually charting, basically we're charting who is blocking whom, both in pass and in run blocking. And this allowed me to do something we never did before, and it's basically accounting for the actual difficulty of the block or of the rush, pass rusher or offensive lineman has to do on a snap. That's basically what's this about.
Now, I noticed within the PFF stats now, there's something called, I think it's OPP percentage. And is that the number, the percentage of the time that an offensive lineman actually has an opponent, where guards, if they have a bubble, don't necessarily have an opponent on every play, for example?
I'm actually not quite sure.
Okay.
So is that in premium stats? Or?
Yeah, it's in premium stats.
So I'm not quite sure. I would have to check that.
Let me bring it up. So we've got blocking reports here for, let's say, center, and there's an OPP percentage in pressures allowed, and it's usually 100, but sometimes it's a little bit less. And I don't know what that number is.
So pass blocking.
No, it's only one.
Oh,
center.
I see it.
It must mean something else.
There's a key. It says percentage of non-spike, non-penalty passing snaps with an opportunity to allow pressure.
Huh. I don't know how to interpret that one. At center, it looks like everybody's 100%. At guard, it looks like everybody's 100%.
I'm not quite sure right now what this means, but it's probably unrelated.
Okay. All right. Well, it's just a side note. Sorry about that. So anyway.
I think it's just removing. I think it's just removing stuff like spikes and pre-snap penalties. So basically when there is, obviously on a spike, you cannot, on a spike, a pass blocker shouldn't be evaluated on a spike because there's nothing happen. Probably maybe so, I don't know. Maybe something like offsides, defensive offsides, is also filtered out.
We can figure that out. I didn't mean to take us down a rabbit hole.
But I don't think it's important to that particular research.
Okay, so since the very early days, and I used to talk to Neil a lot back in 2006, 2007, and whatnot, he was extremely adamant about not trying to delve into opponent quality in terms of offensive line play. So that was something he was. I just said it was a complex problem, I think is how he used to put it. And you know, I didn't disagree or anything. It's just it's something that's kind of relevant for offensive tackles in particular that face great edge rushers. And it's interesting to see you do this. Has PFF taken any other forays down this so far? Or are you the first here?
I think I'm probably the first to work with this data because it basically exists since 2018, 2019, I think, and of course, it always takes at least a year or two to collect enough data to actually do something with it. So I think I first did that 2020 run. I think this is the third season that I produced these kind of charts.
Okay. So really interesting stuff here. I've left links to the charts with the posting. You'll want to bring those up to get a sense of this. But tell us what you're representing on this charts, because there are two dimensions to this. But as you explained before the show, there's really only one meaningful dimension to this.
Yeah. So basically the charts, basically just an x-axis and y-axis, and the y-axis is basically the final output of how impressive a player was in pass protection, or on the opposite side for pass rushers in pass rushing. And while the x-axis is kind of adding the context of how difficult or easy the assignments were. This is not only the quality of the opponents. This is also like situational factors. For example, the most important feature towards the x-axis, towards the difficulty of assignment, is actually how often an offensive lineman gets help. Like how often does a tackle get help from the tight end? Or obviously when it's a standard 4-man rush, then one of the two guards usually gets help from the center. Mm-hmm. So basically which guard gets help from the center is of course a huge factor, because our pass block rates are just much higher when a player gets help. Like when a tackle gets help from a tight end, he averages a much higher grade on these plays than when he's on an island, which that's pretty obvious.
You would expect, yeah.
It's just much easier to not get beat when you have some help. Other important features, obviously the length of the play. So like if it's a screen pass, the expectation is basically almost a zero. So I mean, zero means good for pass protection. Like in pass protection in particular, it's basically if you got beat, you get a -0.5 or -1, or if you got beat badly, a -1.5. And if you don't get beat, usually you get a zero. Like zero is good for pass protection. And of course, on a screenplay or on a bubble screen, like where the quarterback just takes the ball, directly throws it outside to a wide receiver for a bubble screen, then obviously the expected grade for all the offensive linemen is just a zero, because nothing will happen. They cannot mess up. So time to throw on a play, of course, if an offensive tackle is asked to block for 3 or 3.5 seconds, then he's just more likely to get beat eventually. Like this matters a lot. And the dropback depth is of course an important factor. So it's especially for tackles, it's much harder to block if the quarterback drops back very deep. And of course, the quality of opponent, like how good is the opposing edge rusher, is also like a very, very important feature of the model. So these are pretty much the most important features
PFF
that I just talked about.
For pressures for a while had used a 2.5 second standard as being a kind of a getting a zero. But I want to. There's another question I've got to ask first. So you can get a zero or you can get a negative when you're on a pass blocking play. So you then got to normalize per play for these players to give some sort of 0 to 100 score, for example, or normalize a cumulative negative pass blocking score back onto a scale that has an expectation per play?
Yeah, so basically what I do, it's basically what you just said. So like a typical pass blocker, typical pass blocker gets a 0. I don't know, let's say, like actually on most plays, pass blockers aren't beaten. So typical pass blocker gets like a 0 grade 90% of the time. And then 10% of the time you will mess up or will get beaten. What I just do is based on situation, what I just talked about, based on these features like time to throw, drop back depth, also of course down the distance also plays a role, which is of course often very correlated to drop back depth, etc. Opposing edge rusher. Based on these features, I basically give an expectation. So basically on third down, the pass blockers are a little bit more likely to get beaten because just there are no one fits for the edge rushers, so they are just they can pin their ears back and really rush the passer. So it's of course harder for the pass blocker to not get beaten. And basically for every play, based on the situation, based on the play call, I basically compute the expectation, whether it's like 90% a chance to not get beaten, or maybe it's only an 85%, or maybe it's a 95% to not get beaten. And then I basically compare the result to that expectation, do that on every play for every player. And then basically the chart, or basically the y-axis on the chart, is basically the result of comparing the actual walk rates of the pass blockers to this expectation based on all this.
Can you give us a little color here? I'm trying to now get understanding at either tackle. Let's start at center. What is the difference between, say, third down with a 7-step drop, or however you define the drop back distance, and say a first down play where they're lined up? I don't know if you use formation to use that for it also, or whatever might be the highest expectation play. Yeah.
So like if you look at centers, for example, on third down, I can quickly check that. So say it's third down and long. So we say third down and I don't know, like let's say 8 or more yards. So centers get typically beaten 9% of the time. Okay. And if it's let's say it's second down and short, which is probably the best passing situation, because let's say second down at less than 5 yards, centers get beaten only 7% of the time. So like it's not a huge not a huge difference, but like when you consider that the average for centers is of course somewhere in between, like somewhere 8%. 8% is like when the rate of that the average center gets beaten, and like when you go from 8% to 7% or 9%, that's already a lot, because like it's basically relatively seen, it's basically a 12.5% change.
Yes, like exactly.
1/8 of the value. So which is already a lot. It's like going from 100 to 112 or to 88, so to say. So
I get you exactly.
It definitely matters. Like if you look at tackles, the numbers are a little bit more spread out, because tackles generally get beaten more often. Because tackles on an island more often, edge rushers have more space to work with than interior rushers, obviously. So offensive tackles generally get beaten more often. So those numbers, and also the difference in numbers, will be more pronounced for offensive tackles.
By the way, that makes complete sense. It was something I've always seen. It ends up working out as a tougher grading scale for centers and an easier grading scale for tackles in terms of, a frequency and severity events model, which is, I think, what you have here, because you're basically saying how often do you get a negative, and then how negative was it in terms of those underlying 0 to, or +2 to -2 grades. It's really 0 to -2 grades on pass blocking.
Right.
Okay. All right. So, let's talk about Tyler Linderbaum in particular, because we do want to get to the Ravens information, who turns out to be the second best in terms of grade over expectation among all centers.
That's right. Yeah, there's only Wayne Kelly who's currently graded higher. So yeah, that's definitely encouraging for him. I think he was already above average when I looked at this last year, which is of course. Don't think so.
I don't think so at all. He was among the lowest rated PFF pass blockers last year. It's a huge reversal of his game this year.
All right. Yeah.
So you could, take a look at the 2022 pass blocking numbers. I don't think they would tell you that.
I probably didn't do that before the show.
Yeah, it's okay.
So when I look at offensive centers 2022,
I do want to make the point. I'm often.
So I actually have him above average 2022. So that's interesting. So what's his?
So if you look at just the raw pass blocking score, I think he's probably like 29th out of 32 centers or in that range. So if it may have included other things that were his, I know it might include his snaps, but I don't think he had a bad snapping year last year. That is one thing that I know PFF includes in the pass blocking score for centers.
When I look at the 0 to 100 grade, yeah, it was indeed not good.
Yeah.
Last year. So was this a penalty thing? But he only had 3 penalties.
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was that.
So that's interesting. So yeah, he had some really bad, quite a few bad games last year, according to this. Like there were like 5 games with a grade in the 20s from last year.
Yep.
Pretty decent in all the other games, but yeah. So that's interesting. So it's interesting that I actually had him already above average last year here. So I can look into that a little bit more, why that is the case.
I'd love to hear, and I'll try and add commentary maybe to this, or at least talk about it on the offensive line analysis. But that's a very interesting thing, and it's okay. It's when 2 models look at something and they come up with a different result. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That probably give you some insight into that. Yeah. All right. Well, fantastic. So I looked at this, and when I saw Linderbaum was near the top, and he's been having a good year grade wise, although he's had a couple bad games this year. He's generally had a good year grade wise, I think, for PFF and definitely on my scale. And one of the things that really stood out was that he's reversed a very bad pass blocking grade from last year with what you've got in this chart. And that's extremely encouraging. He has been better as a pass blocker. He's got notably, significantly less pressures this year than he had last year on a per snap basis. But I know you're not really looking individually. You're looking at this at a higher level. I'm just, is there anything else that could be going into this grade that would be favoring him and should mute our excitement about how good he looks?
I'm not quite sure. So obviously he is kind of on the right of this chart. So like his assignments are a little bit easier maybe than for most centers, which I think is mostly like the Ravens are in favorable passing situations more often than other teams. So I actually looked at this before the show. So like the Ravens are in third down just less often than other teams because they are just better on first and second down. Like they don't even get to third down that often. And
with the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Guys, I've shared moving. I was using this for all my meals. Now I'm working from home. Guess what? Microwaves in the other room. I'm using this for all my meals. Factor is how I get through my lunch day every day. But they've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I haven't tried the breakfast ones yet, but why not? I think I might add that to my next order. But I love them for lunch. Plus, they've got new autumn fall flavors out right now for limited time, featuring seasonal veggies like cranberry, pecan chicken, and apple Dijon pork chops. And again, just like everything else, they're ready in just 2 minutes. They'll satisfy your fall cravings during this busy season without the hassle. So go ahead and level up with Gourmet Plus options as well, prepared to perfection by chefs and ready to eat in record time. Treat yourself to upscale meals with premium ingredients like broccoli, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus. Head to factormeals.com/ravens50 and use the code ravens50 to get 50% off. That's code ravens50 at factormeals.com/ravens50 to get 50% off your Factor meal today.
Also, when they get to third down, they have like lower yards to go, just because obviously because they can run the ball well. So just they are not in third and long that often, which obviously helps the offensive line, basically, which is why the model says, okay, the assignments weren't that hard, but I wouldn't say that's obviously not a negative for him. The y-axis obviously accounts for that. And I looked at his opponents. So the quality of his opponents is actually pretty close to average. So it's not that he faced a atrocious slate of interior rushers who couldn't play. So that's not the case. So I think it's actually quite encouraging.
Well, last year he really did play a lot of big men, it seemed. He had a lot of trouble against the Giants, for example, and Dexter Lawrence. And I'm trying to think of who the other really big centers he had, but he faced some guys that he really had difficulty with. I guess he's faced.
He had a very bad grade against the Jets last year.
Okay, so that's a great interior defensive line. Yeah.
He had a bad game against the Giants, Dexter Lawrence. That makes a lot of sense. Bad game against the Bucks, which was probably
Vita Vea
if he was healthy. So there seems to be there was kind of a pattern last year, right, that he maybe struggled against those.
Yeah, it's
big.
It's really big and tackles. Long defensive tackles that gave him a lot of trouble, got him off balance a lot last year, and I definitely noticed the trend, and excuses were made in Baltimore all year about how he's only having trouble with a certain type of center. Not everybody has one of these, and there are a lot of those in the NFL. When you get down to Vita Vea, he's a solid NFL interior defensive lineman, but he's certainly not the best. And it is what it is. Anyway, let's get back to it a little bit. And so anyway, second best, big change, and it looks like it's about maybe 0.18 would be what I would read the chart as saying. Let me be sure I'm getting that correctly. Yeah, his 0.018 better than the expected average.
Right. So basically, you can think of that as like almost 2% less. Like he gets beat 2% or almost 2% less often than the average center, which is of course based on what we just talked about. Like the average center is only getting beat like 8%, and of course getting beat only 6% is very good.
So he might be 22.5% better at 0.018 over 0.08. He might be 22.5% better than an average center in terms of getting beat.
Right.
Okay, that's fantastic.
That's very good.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's great. Well, let's look at the other positions here, because you produce charts at guard and at tackle as well. So when we move over to guard, the graph is very crowded here in terms of players that are available. But Kevin Zeitler appears significantly above average. And also, it looks like there's a much bigger range of outcomes at guard than there is at center. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think guards, at least guards get beat more often, and also when you look at the bottom for guards, like there is basically no limit. Like there are guards that get beaten a lot. So not being at the very bottom here is probably. Yeah, it's probably what you want with your guards. Are you muted?
I am muted, and that happens from time to time. So I'll look at this one more time. Thank you for saying that. So I'm looking. I'm trying to read the chart for Kevin Zeitler, and I see he's at minus 0.06 roughly. No, a little bit better than that. A little bit more than that. Maybe minus 0.062 or something like that in average difficulty of expectation, and then he's about maybe 0.015.
That's hard to say. Yeah.
I was going to say 0.015, maybe a third of the way.
Like this. Yeah, we can't really see that on the. Yeah, you can't really figure out the number on the chart. Like it's more like a directional information. But yeah, probably something like that.
Okay. Well, I mean, there wouldn't be any reason why the top of your chart would be differently scaled than the bottom of your chart, because it looks like a linear scale.
It's linear scale. So
okay,
it's just missed out on the 0.05 break.
Right.
Because we made a cut right there.
But I'm just eyeballing it to the difference from the zero line to where Zeitler is, and then trying to judge how much that difference is. Okay. Anyway, we won't go into too much graph reading here, but that seems very positive for Zeitler as well. Obviously, he's not had as difficult a set of assignments. In some sense, that makes it even harder to beat. But he's looked pretty good on those assignments.
Right. Yeah. He's definitely on the positive side, as expected for him, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he has been right there for most of his career.
Yeah, he's certainly been a good guard. I didn't think he was having a particularly good year earlier this year. I see John Simpson on the other side of the line here. Not quite the worst guard by any stretch, but it certainly hasn't been, I don't think, any better than about the 30th percentile among all guards. Maybe worse than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like when your worst of the two guards is placed where John Simpson is placed, like that's fine, I guess, in pass protection. I think like you don't want a guard like at the very bottom here. You probably don't want both of your guards below average. But when one of your guards is a little bit weak, obviously you can work around that, right? You can shift with your center a little bit. You can help them. So I think that's fine. Like that's not a huge issue for the passing game. Like when one of your guard is above average, the other is a little bit below average. I think that's nothing which is nothing which makes your passing game unfunctional, I think.
Okay, and I don't think that's surprising to Ravens fans to see that relationship between the two guards. But there is a name on the left I want to ask you about, because this is a guy who was really interested in the Ravens maybe trying to pick up at the trade deadline. Is Michael Onwenu of the Patriots, and I see him over.
Yeah, he was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was at the top of this, I think, in previous years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, not that good of a season this year, which is of course fitting for the whole Patriots offense. So like nobody over there has a good year. So not surprising. Like when the whole offense is not working, it's probably hard for the guy to stick out. But yeah, he's not having that good of a year this year compared to last year.
The point I wanted to make is that Onwenu, while he's not having a good year and it shows up in the PFF grades, he's had the hardest set of assignments for the year. The difficulty assignment has been the highest of any guard.
Right. I think you also like all the Steelers offensive linemen also
mm-hmm.
at the left of these very often. And I think that's like the Steelers almost never run play action. And I think that's true for the Patriots too, at least this year, because they're in bad passing situations all the time. So they are trailing all the time. They're probably in third and long very often. So they just don't have a lot of opportunity to run play action. And probably when they get the opportunity, they don't really do it. So not running play action is a big factor here, because play action just makes pass blocking a little bit easier for offensive linemen, because obviously the pass rush is slowed down a little bit by their run fits. And I think that's a big factor for Mike Onwenu, but also for the Steelers offensive linemen who are very often at the left of these charts.
Okay, great point. Really interesting stuff that's going into this. So play action is one of the factors, though, for your model.
Yeah, it also goes into the difficulty computations.
Can you give us all of the things, or is there some proprietary element here that you can't share with us about all of the factors?
No, of course. So it's like I already talked about whether they are getting help, like the quality of the opposing edge rusher, and not necessarily edge rusher, just pass rusher, quality of opposing pass rusher, the time to throw, the drop-back depth is important. Then I have a separated feature, whether it's a screen pass, yes or no. Like it's obviously connected to time to throw and also to drop-back depth, but yeah, I just made it a separate factor because it's so important, because screen passes are basically never created negatively because quarterback gets rid of the ball so quickly. Then like an interesting factor for the Ravens in particular is whether it's a straight dropback or rollout, because obviously the Ravens roll out a little bit more often than like the standard NFL team with an immobile quarterback. Then the play action is a factor. Then obviously whether the defense blitzes makes a difference, and then some situational factors like down, distance, current score difference, current score, field position, and another interesting factor, which is kind of married to the quality of the opposing pass rusher, is just the position of the opposing pass rusher. So like I mean, are you blocking against the defensive tackle? Are you blocking against the linebacker? Are you blocking against the cornerbacks? Obviously, for interior linemen, they are most often blocking against defensive linemen, but of course, offensive tackles are more often sometimes blocking against blitzing cornerbacks, against blitzing linebackers, and this is of course a little bit easier. An offensive tackle would probably prefer to block a cornerback on a blitz than against the best edge rushers in the league. So this also plays a role. These kind of things. I think these were basically all of them.
Let me. That's first of all, that's great, and I'd love to forward people to an article that they can read that kind of enumerates these if you've got one. So
I wrote about this like 2 years ago, so I can look for it and then send you a link.
All right, that's terrific. I'll try and include that, folks, in the podcast capsule there online. If you go to filmstudybaltimore.com, you look up this particular pod, you'll be able to see these charts and Timo's article with it. Outstanding stuff. Let's move on to tackle and talk a little bit about that. The Ravens obviously have been up and down, I'd say, with some of the pass blocking at tackle this year, but trying to find Morgan Moses looks like he's above average, and that seems to fit with what I've got. And I'm afraid Ronnie Stanley's going to be below average, but I can't even see him. Yeah, there he is.
Yeah, he is. He's basically just like below Morgan Moses. So if you go to Morgan Moses and then just below, there's Ronnie Stanley. So yeah, he's probably having his worst pass block year of his career, maybe even. I mean, excluding maybe his first 2 seasons. So that's interesting because he always used to be the best Ravens offensive tackle, of course. Not having this good of a year so far. Maybe he improves. So he's not that old. Like he is. How old is he? He is 29. So he's not too old for an offensive tackle. So this is not. It's not like okay, he's just too old. That's not the case, I think. So it might be just some. I don't know what Was he injured at any point?
Yeah, he's got a severe set of injuries he's been recovering from since he got his ankle hurt in 2020. Yeah, he hasn't really been the same since. He basically played 1 game in 2021, then missed the rest of the year.
Right,
And that was when Villanueva was at left tackle. He's terrible. He missed the end of 2020, and then it came back in 2022. And he played
half of last season, right?
A little bit more, but yeah.
A little bit more than that, but he created out well last year. It's he last played more than 1,000 snaps in 2019. Yeah, so injuries really definitely have been a concern there. So it's interesting to see whether he can get back to to those elite offensive tackles again, where he definitely was prior to his injuries.
So it has felt like Ronnie has had extremely difficult matchups in terms of elite pass rushers on that side. But really what your graph is telling me is his combination of circumstances that includes the quality of the opponent plus the down and distance and other things, play action, depth of drop, et cetera, has really been one of the easiest blocking situations for a tackle in the league so far. And then obviously,
I think it's basically the Ravens situations and also their play calling that I think pushes both of their tackles to the right here. I think they also shift more help to him.
Yes.
Compared to Morgan Moses. So I think he might have faced a little bit harder pass rushes, but I think they shift more help to him. I think when I looked at that for the show, so he gets help a little bit more often, and this kind of pushes him to the right here.
I would be very interested if you have a metric which would show the amount of time that Stanley gets help, because it seems like this has been a coaching point of emphasis for John Simpson these last couple of weeks, trying to get him to process quickly from center out so he can get to his help block quickly. Obviously, he's not the most significant help factor. Probably the most significant help factor is getting Patrick Ricard or a running back over there to try and chip on that guy on the left side, or even be an additional blocker on the left.
Yeah. So we have. So let me actually look at this before the show. So we have the average tackle, whether that's right or left tackle. We chart them with help 37% of the time. In 2023, and Morgan Moses is at 33%, and Ronnie Stanley is at 41%. Yeah, so Ronnie Stanley is above average, Morgan Moses is below average, which I think makes sense because it's hard to help both tackles at a high rate because, you
only got 11 guys.
You only have 11 players, can only help so much. So that makes a lot of sense, and I think this pushes Ronnie Stanley to the right on this graph a little bit, even though he faced hard opposing edge rushers.
All right, Timo, this is an absolutely fascinating concept. I'm looking to read whatever you come up with this, and this is just traditional great PFF R&D stuff that I'm used to from you and Eric and in the past anyway, and really I appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. Tell people where they can either talk football with you online or read your work.
Yeah, so you can read my work on pff.com. Just watch out for my articles there, or I think if you search my name and PFF on Google, you get directed to my author page where you get all my articles, only my articles. If you happen to want to read only those, or you can follow me on Twitter at PFF_MOO. That's where you can find me, where you can read my work or my content.
All right. Great stuff, Timo. Always appreciate you having on to explain something. This obviously is a very complex concept and is kind of on the forefront of a lot of football analytics as I see it, or at least the common ones that I see have access to. So really appreciate you taking the time to show it to us. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a Film Study short, hit me up. I'm always available for that, and I'll respond to you very quickly. DM on Twitter is the easiest way, and they're always open for you, and I'll get back to you very quickly. Timo, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.